Hi, thank you for joining me on another episode of the Tech Exec podcast, where I help you create teams worth leading because life's too short to lead mediocre teams. As always, I'm your host, Aviv Ben-Yosef, tech executive coach and consultant, and today we're down to the final episode of the 8 Traits series. Reminding you, the 8 traits are those that I have my clients self-assess when we start working together to see where we need to drill down. You, my friends, have listened to the past 7 episodes, and now we're down to the last one of my favorites, product mastery. What does that even mean? I think this is a really good one to end with. Product mastery is about the name that I gave this is supposed to be a contrast from what I know so many of us have naturally, which is the tech mastery. We come from a tech background. We may have even grown up in the company over time. I see so many CTOs or VPs of engineering who started as ICs in the company and grew into their senior leadership roles. And maybe you're a co-founder and you started from doing the actual work, the tech mastery part, with your own hands, right? However, having that is good. Sometimes it's even a must depending on your role and situation. But that's not enough to be a genuine senior tech executive. Because if you're only the tech expert and you don't understand the product, you cannot really bridge the gap in the company between what the business needs and what the technology can offer and can do. A good tech executive sits right over this gap. At best, you even create an organization that can do this also. So you help other people in your organization and you're not the sole hub between the two, but that's a point for a different episode. Now let's talk about what product mastery means for you specifically. When I talk to senior executives and I see that they're lacking in product mastery, usually the way for me to tell this is when I ask them, how well do you understand the company's roadmap, strategy, the business, the market, what your competitors are doing, what regulatory forces are in effect, what do you expect to change when it comes to the company's positioning? Really having this sort of understanding, and again, you don't have to be the equivalent of a CPO, you don't have to be as knowledgeable as the CEO, etc. However, if you've got that responsibility, if you're genuinely an executive in the company, you have to understand the product side of the things that the company is doing. And when you're equipped of this, you can tell whether you're doing things correctly or not. So when I ask people about this and they're like, yeah, I understand in general, I understand those parts, I don't really understand some of those parts, etc. That's a huge problem. And I think that when we genuinely understand things, when we as technical people in general, and specifically leadership, have that understanding really as something that's core to our roles, we can deliver amazing innovation. We can ensure that what we're doing is usually the right thing or the most important thing to do, as opposed to just doing tech for tech's sake. One of my favorite examples, and I've got an article describing this in detail as a case study, and maybe I'll link to it in the show notes. This is a company I worked with a few years ago, and they were creating a solution to be used in operation rooms. A very demanding environment and a sort of product that's not easy for the engineers to grasp because, again, we're not doctors. We don't really understand that environment intuitively, and therefore it's not as easy as, even understanding a fintech product where you can understand the money flows. And what they decided to do was create a demo operating room in the company's offices. So you had everything, with the operation bed and everything, and fake like cardboard models of the equipment in the room, so you could see how your users use the product in that environment. So you can tell instinctively the UX that's required because they have a few screens and then there's your screen. And they cannot use a mouse easily because it's an operation room. So think about the UX in that scenario. They cannot easily look at things that are small print because they have to be at a certain distance from the display. All of these things become natural when you step into that room and you see the product being used in its natural or semi-demo natural environment. And it's a lot harder to convey all of that context in just onboarding and talking about it. It would take you hours to convey that sort of thinking for a new employee, and it takes you like 30 seconds once you step into the room, you stand in the position and you see, and immediately you grok the difference that it takes. That's an amazing example of bringing product mastery into your organization. And the question is, are you doing what you ought to do in order to have this? So I want you to consider, do you really understand what the company is about? What your company's users are thinking when they're using the product, what problems you're solving for them, what their alternatives are, what they're thinking about when they're choosing to use you, what's their mindset when they're using the product, how things are changing in the industry. And having this product mastery ability will mean that you can ensure that what you're doing makes a lot of sense. You can come up with the right ideas. When your company has intermissions, innovation weeks, whatever you want to call them, you'll have better ideas that can really move the needle if they succeed, because again, you really understand the user's needs. You understand the context within which the company is operating. And that's a force multiplier to be reckoned with. It's something that once we really have that, I see the immense difference it makes in teams, because then they can really leverage all of their tech mastery into immediate impact, into things that no one else would have done, because they're the only ones who have both the tech mastery and the product mastery and can combine them to find solutions that, for example, people in product never would have come up with. And that's almost magical. To do that, if right now you feel like you're missing out on this, I recommend starting with the simple product mastery onboarding I described in my book, The Tech Executive Operating System. And to review it really quickly in like a minute now, I recommend starting with sitting down with your product counterparts, really understanding the company's strategy, why people are using it, who your competitors are, what are the differences that the market has gone through in the past year, what you're expecting, the company is expecting to see changing over the next year or two. And understanding, especially if you're operating in a market with public competitors, public companies, I highly recommend looking into their yearly reports, seeing what they're doing, seeing their investments, understanding what their customers are saying. If you have a complex product and you weren't there from day one, use the product, really understand it. Watch client interviews, watch onboarding or client sessions recorded in your analytics to understand how people are using the product. Maybe if you're having sales calls, the company has sales calls and they're recorded with a tool like Gong.io, listen to those conversations and see how your customers are thinking about the product. What language are they using? Sit down with customer success and see what a day looks like when it comes to the regular issues that are propping up, what people are asking, what sort of issues are repeating. Once you understand that, you will be able to, again, be an amazing executive for the company. And actually, in too many companies, you just might be the only one who's capable of grasping the entire spectrum that we're talking about, because you can understand both the technology parts and the product parts. And you don't have to be some business expert in order to be able to grok all of this. It really just requires you to sit down, think about this. Don't tell yourself, I'm not supposed to understand this. This is not what tech people do. Let go of those assumptions if you have them, and instead focus on the fact that you already have the capability to debug complex systems And the business part of the company is probably less complicated than your nastiest piece of code in the company. So you can really understand, at least shallowly, what's required, what's happening. And from there, you can keep improving, keep getting deeper into the system, into the product as things evolve. That's it. I hope you found the entire series interesting and that maybe it has helped you to pinpoint an area to where you need to improve or can improve. If you have any ideas, any questions, any comments, any success stories from what you've done, my email's in the show notes and I'm always happy to hear. And lastly, as I always remind you, if you haven't yet, do check out my newsletter. It's the best newsletter online for tech execs, where I have this podcast, videos, articles, and other goodies every week. As always, thank you for joining me. I hope you enjoyed this series, and I'm looking forward to see what I'll come up with next week for next week's episode. Till then, ciao.